சின்ன இன்ட்ரடக்ஷன் பண்ணிடுறேன். டாக்டர் செல்வகுமார் அவரோட ஏரியாஸ் ஆஃப் ஸ்பெஷலைசேஷன் ஆர்கியாலஜி, மேரிடைம் ஆர்கியாலஜி அண்ட் ஹிஸ்ட்ரி. 17 வருஷமாக டீச் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்கார். அண்ட் ஹிஸ் பப்ளிஷ் நிறைய புக்ஸ் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணியிருக்கார், நிறைய பேப்பர்ஸ் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணியிருக்கார். இதில் மோஸ்ட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் பேப்பர் என்னென்னா மெட்ரலாஜிக்கல் ட்ரெடிஷன்ஸ் ஆஃப் சவுத் இந்தியா. இன்னொன்று அயன் ஏஜ், ஏர்லி ஹிஸ்டாரிக்கல் அண்ட் மெடிவல் செட்டில்மெண்ட்ஸ் இன் த லோவர் காவேரி வேலி அப்படின்னு இது ரெண்டும் ரீசன்ட் பேப்பர்ஸ். He studied the inscriptions in Tanjavure's Bharathiyar temple. அதுவும் ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்காக இருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ இன்னைக்கு வந்து மேரிடைம் ட்ரேட் ஆஃப் ஏன்ஷியன்ட் தமிழ்நாடு பற்றி பேச போகிறார் சார்.
So good evening, and how many of you can follow Tamil? How many cannot understand Tamil? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 people, I think 4 or 5. So I will start my. I'll speak in English. In between, I will also explain things in Tamil. Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here on during the celebration of Karaikal Ammaiyar Day as part of Tamil Heritage and Indian Languages Week. I would like to thank this Center for Indian Languages and Dr. Professor Rajendran Damodaran for inviting me to make this presentation. So today I am going to talk about the maritime trade of ancient Tamizhagam. So this lecture is a very long lecture. I have over 200 slides. Generally, archaeologists, they use more, they deal with material culture or materiality or the world that you see in front, and less of words they deal with. So my presentation has a lot of images. This has introductory part, and then I come to the urbanization question in ancient Tamizhagam, and then maritime trade. So let's move into the introductory part. What is maritime history? Though we call maritime history as something related to the marine or across the ocean, it is intimately linked to the hinterland history. So there cannot be maritime history without the history of the mainland. And also, when we look at history, we need to have multiple perspectives. What happens is, if you want to study the history of India, you cannot confine to India alone. We have to look at history from different angles, right from what I call here as local history. We have been assigning this local history as a subject of research for our students. So it is very important that we write local history at the village level. Each and every village history should be written the same way. History is not about empires or major territories. It is about villages. India's life is in the villages. Therefore, it is our duty to write history of each village in India. On this basis only we assign our students a research topic related to villages. What is the point if 100 people produce a dissertation on Taj Mahal or Brihadishwara temple or Madurai Meenakshi temple? So the local history has to be written, and history can be approached in different levels. See, regional history, this is also important, and we also have to look at history from the meta-region level in terms of South India or India, macro region. Ultimately, we need to see history as one, what I call as Afro-Eurasian world. When we want to understand the maritime interaction, we need to go above, and we need to look for evidences for Indian history beyond its boundaries. In that way, if you want to understand the history of ancient Tamizhagam, there are a lot of evidences, inscriptions which are found in Southeast Asia, and there are inscriptions found on ceramics in Egypt, So we need to look at history at various levels. That is what I wanted to highlight in this particular trade. And also, when it comes to maritime history, there are different focal areas, like what we call as Harappan trade. So in India, we give too much importance to Harappan culture. This is also something to do with the rise of nationalism as a response to colonialist criticism. So colonialists were criticizing the achievement of Indian past, and right in 1920s, the Indus civilization came up. From then onwards, Indian archaeologists are generally focused on Indus civilization. But whereas other regions and other areas have been largely ignored. So this is one important area where we need to look at. This is where I said, each and every village history has to be reconstructed. For that, there is a largest archaeology record. Normally we go for, when we write history, we focus on the written record. Actually, each and every village has an archaeological record, which is as big as the village, and that needs to be tagged. Actually, many archaeological excavations have been conducted in India, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, Gujarat to Arunachal Pradesh, but that history has not been written coherently to highlight in the textbook. So this is one of the problems we have as far as Indian history is concerned. Recently, in Tamil Nadu, there is a trend of focusing on archaeology. The site of Kiradi that has come up with a lot of evidences. People are amazed by the findings of this Kiradi site. And here, archaeology has a development potential also. Archaeology can be used as a source for local economic development when we approach this through heritage management component. Actually, we have not really promoted our archaeological site efficiently. You ask if there is any one museum which tells the history of Chola. No, we don't have. We just collect objects and keep. Same way, there is no one museum that can tell about the history of Sangam age. No. So what is lacking is that we are not producing a beautiful narrative. But if you visit many of the foreign countries, they have limited history, but they have made their museum very attractive. So in this manner of showcasing our history, we have not achieved enough. This is one area where we need to focus. So this maritime history is looked at from different angle. India, Southeast Asia interaction, Indo-Roman trade, Indian Ocean trade, and in some areas we completely ignored the connections with Africa. We had intimate connections with Africa. Again, in early researchers in the 1950s and 60s, they were focusing mainly on Italian or Roman connections. Now, these concepts of Indo-Roman trade has changed into Indian Ocean trade. So we are trying to look at the trade from a broader perspective. So earlier scholars were focusing only on the Roman connection, completely ignoring other, like the way we focus only Harappan culture and ignoring the rest of India. So this trend has changed in historiography from the 1980s onwards. Now, with the China emerging as a major power, there are several developments in the Indian Ocean. You know that about MSR, Maritime Silk Road, and One Belt, One Road initiative. So there is so much of interest on the Silk Road, and there are also debates, how this trade should be described, whether it should be Silk Road or a Spice Road. There are other issues involved in this kind of depiction. And in marine archaeology, there is a major area that focuses on underwater archaeology. This is also an underdeveloped area in India, because to undertake underwater archaeology, we need a lot of resources. Similarly, coastal ports and trade networks, I have excavated 2 coastal ports, about which I will be talking about it later. And navigation and nautical archaeology, traditional boat building. Many of the traditional boats have disappeared, and we have a lot of evidences in the ancient literature, as well as we have a text called Kappal Navai Satram that was written from Tarangambadi in the 17th century. So we had actually a rich navigation traditions, and that also need to be researched. And so there are different areas. Coming to this particular presentation, what I am going to focus is mainly Afro-Eurasian world, and with a specific context of Tamizhagam, which includes modern Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And coming to this, I need to tell about the chronology, and we have evidence of Tamizhagam starting right from the Paleolithic period, but we cannot be sure what kind of language was spoken at that point of time. But from the Neolithic culture period onwards, we have very clear evidence for cultural development. We have Neolithic evidence dating from roughly 2200 BCE to 1800 BCE, that is emerging, and we have evidence for internal exchange. What we find in the Sangam literature as Aindinai or Kurinji Marudam, Mullai, Neidal Palai, Tinai landscape emerged in Tamil Nadu about say 5000 years ago. We can be very sure. And then we have Iron Age, which has been dated to 2200 BC based on recent excavation at Mailadum Parai. And then we come to the core early historic period, which is coeval with the Sangam literature, what is otherwise known as urbanization. And that is the period between 500 BCE to 300 CE. We call this as historical period based on the presence of written documents. Coastal landscapes, that has been highlighted in the Thinai concept. I will not go into that detail. Coming to this sources, we have a lot of Indian as well as foreign sources for understanding the maritime trade. We have Periplus, and we have several other Greco-Roman texts, and mainly Sangam literature. I am not touching upon Sangam literature here. And these are the sub-themes that we can look at in the context of maritime history. We have traditional conception of landscape and oceanscape, how oceanscape was conceived in Indian philosophical thought, and the same way as Tolkappiyam describes the coastal landscape. We have the story of Samudra Mandana. So these kind of ideas and ideologies can be studied. And then coastal communities and cultural adaptation. We have actually not worked sufficiently on the fisher folk communities. Currently our department is working on the history of fisher folk in Tamil Nadu, and we have a lot of inscription speaking about the fisher folk. There is one inscription at Thiruvidandai, which is south of Chennai, where there is a reference to fisher folk coming and celebrating the birthday of Rajaraja. Similarly, there is another inscription in Tirukkuvalai, datable to 13th century, and there one Alan from the fisher folk community, he begged 1000 kasus in the 13th century, and he established the image of Adipatta Nayanar. You know about the story of Adipatta Nayanar, which is associated with Nagapattinam, and there is a beautiful reference to this. Apart from that, these fisher folk were the one who were connecting the long distance trade with the hinterland, because it is very tricky to land on the coast. Even during the colonial time, many of the fisher folk were helping the colonial masters to land and come to the coast. In that way, the fisher folk community's history constitutes an important area. And then we can study long distance cultural connections, and then marine resources, how communities were using marine resources and processes. That all we can study, and we have a lot of reference to these fisher folk community in Sangam literature, and we have evidence of utilization of marine resources. This dates back to the time of Harappan civilization, and also in the area, context of Neolithic culture in southern India, and we have also evidence of fish moving from coastal area to hinterland, even from the Harappan times. And utilization of the shell bangle. Sangam literature has beautiful narration of this valai or shell bangle, and that is worn by the ladies, and who thin down during the pangs of separation from the lovers, and then the bangles fall. That kind of narration happens. But interestingly, if you look at the term vala refer to the Shankar bangle, and interestingly the term bola in Bengali is also very similar. We also need to undertake research on that. In this context, I would like to point out the term Vangam that occurs in early Tamil literature, and also Padagu or Padavu has parallel in Philippines and Southeast Asia. Probably these terms date back to a prehistoric time when these communities were interacting. So this navigation technology was exchanged during the prehistoric time. So we get a lot of such evidence. Coming to this early interaction, when did people interact with? I was talking about this formation of 5 Thinai landscape, when this must have emerged. Traditionally in Tamil Nadu's history, what we have done is, we have studied only the Sangam literature. We did not look at the parallel archaeological evidence. Only with the excavation at Kiradi, people have realized that archaeology has tremendous potential. Archaeology deals with material culture and materiality and the physical world that is in front of you, unlike literature, which talks about words and a concept or written documents. So the whole world that is in front of you it gets buried, and that can be excavated, and so many things can be unearthed. This is a great potential, and we have evidence for early interactions right from the Neolithic period. Recently we have excavated a site called Molapalayam in Coimbatore. We have not published the details yet, and we have evidence of very good Neolithic culture. The people, when they started agriculture and pastoralism, we have documented evidence of green gram and black gram and a lot of millets there, and also animals. So we undertook multidisciplinary studies, and from this finding we get a date of 1600 BCE. That means 3600 years ago we have this Neolithic, or what is in Sangam language Mullai Mullai landscape emerging here. And similarly we have evidence for people living in the Kurunji even much before what is otherwise known as Mesolithic, and these people were exchanging shell beads. We excavated 3 burials at Molapalayam near Coimbatore. We found this particular shell bead which was placed by the rib of that lady. That lady is about 35 years old, and you can see the complete skeleton, and then this Oliva SP, that shell bead has been kept, and this is 1600 BCE. This Oliva SP has been used as an ornament all over India and also in Southeast Asia. We also found a cut shell bangle. Similarly, this Oliva species and other shells have been used in Deccan Chalcolithic. What is important here is the development of interaction network. What we see in the Sangam literature, it beautifully narrates how people were exchanging the meat of deer, Venetian, for the curd or other produce. We have very beautiful references there, and we have this developing somewhere in the early period. So far we had ignored this particular data. Another important evidence is in the mummy of Ramses II. In the nostril they have found peppercorn that is dated to 1300 BCE. So that suggests that this pepper went from South India. That is another important evidence for this connections starting in 2nd millennium BC. There is another evidence that has been reported from Israel. There is, in archaeology, there is an approach called ceramic residue analysis, in which what we do normally, if we excavate a pottery sherd, we don't wash it. We extract the organic remains and study them. So this cinnamaldehyde, cinnamon plant has gone either from South India or Sri Lanka about in 900 BCE. This has been reported by Divori Namdar in a journal. So all these evidence, what I am showing here from Molappalayam near Coimbatore, the shell and the evidence from Egypt and Israel clearly suggests that the ancient Tamizhagam had trade connections as early as 1300 BCE, overland, a long distance across the ocean, maritime connections. Unfortunately, we have not pursued this. Our conventional focus on Tamil history has been confined to Sangam literature, only 300 BCE to 500 BCE. With the recent past government and archaeology department taking initiatives, we are able to understand the development in the early period. This happens sometimes with the researchers. When there is a particular subject, everybody focuses on one area, like the way Indus civilization is focused. So we need to work on the foundations of South Indian or Dravidian cultural roots that has not been researched in detail. Similarly, not only in other parts of India also, we have evidence for cultures developing contemporary to the Harappan or Indus Valley civilizations, and that has not been sufficiently researched. What I am trying to argue is that archaeologists or historians sometimes they are focusing on only one particular area, the other area need to be researched in detail. Especially, we cannot speak of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka when we talk about Neolithic. They were all southern Neolithic complexes. So we need to cross these boundaries and undertake research. That is the idea that I am trying to convey. Iron Age or megalithic period, we have a lot of megalithic burials. People built these stone monuments using large stones. You can see them all around in Tamil Nadu. We have that Mallas Sandram, that is near Dharmaburi. There is a dolmen, and then Kodakal from Kerala, and sarcophagus. This is in Louvre Museum, Paris, which was excavated by Casal. And similarly, a lot of these megalithic burials are found all across Tamil Nadu. They constitute the Iron Age from about, say, 1200 BCE. Recently, from Mailadumbarai, they say it could date back to 2200 BCE. So this particular pre-Sangam or pre-early historic period foundations of the culture has not been sufficiently researched. And you find a lot of these urns. Recently, central government has sanctioned money for creating a museum at Adichanallur. Adichanallur is another important site. So what I am trying to argue is that the early history of Tamizhagam has not been scientifically researched using archaeological remains. We have a lot of potential. To undertake this research, we need a lot of funds, a lot of financial support, and also interdisciplinary studies. When you undertake archaeological research, you need scientific aid. Only scientific dating can help you to fix the culture. And apart from that, we also need to focus on heritage education component. Already participants were discussing about making this history as part of textbook. So we need to create more interesting museums, digital museums. So this is something very important. We have evidence of these burials. This one is from Sanur, where they have found cut conch shell ornament, ear ornament, and so many things have been found. They clearly indicate the interactions in the Iron Age. So now I have moved into the first millennium BC, where how people were interacting. This is the excavated site before excavation at Sanur. Now the site has destroyed. Has been completely destroyed, partly preserved because of ASI's initiative. Many of the other megalithic sites have been completely destroyed because of the development activities. So we need to do a lot in terms of preserving these megalithic sites. These are some of the shell objects, and interestingly, some of these shell ornaments are found in South Indian megaliths are very similar to what has been reported from Nagaland, among the communities of Nagaland. James Hutton has already reported. So we, from early historic period, we get a lot of evidence for urbanization. We place the urbanization in Tamil Nadu, or in Tamil we call it Nagaramayamakkam, around 500 BCE. and we have evidence of a lot of industries and also a lot of new developments. We have Vendar level of development, non-kinship based political formation. So Velir to Vendar, actually Pungundran has discussed this, how this Velir kind of political system emerged in the Iron Age, how it shifted to a Vendar based system. In the Vendar based system, it is not kinship related. So basically it was non-kinship based political formation, introduction of writing, introduction of coins, long distance interaction, craft and industrial production, brick architecture. These are some of the salient features of the urbanization in the early historic period. In Tamil we call it Nagaramayamakkam. In this period we have ports, markets and political center. Here we have two kinds of settlements in Tamil Nadu. One is the political centers in the hinterland. They were supported by the internal dynamics, basically internal development. For example, Urayur or capital of the Chodas near Tiruchirapalli, Madurai and Kidadi complex near as the capital of the Pandyas, and each town had a port city also, Kaveri Pumpattinam and then Adagankulam, Korkai. In the case of Karur, this was the second capital of the Cheras, Sangam Cheras, and then Musiri as the port. So these kind of settlements develop, and there is a clear demarcation in the settlement size. For example, if you take the case of Kaveri Pumpattinam, it covers almost